We're doing our follow-up to our grading conversation because it's just gotten impactful, but we accidentally didn't record that part because I didn't know I was supposed to. So as we begin, Malia and I, as AVA teachers, totally understand the importance of advocacy in the classroom and students advocating for themselves, students having someone to advocate for them, and the power that that gives a person when they have an advocate. And that came up in our conversation as well, and it's a pretty big deal. So hopefully we can stick to grading, but also advocates and parents and teachers who advocate for students are also a powerful force in how those grades come out, how those grades are reported, and how those things happen. Wouldn't you agree, Malia?
Yeah, and so because of that advocacy piece, and also I would argue that we have students that have been trained to be advocates for themselves. I mean, I have two daughters right now, a 4th grader and a 9th grader, who both are very good at advocating for themselves because of having growing up the way they've grown up. So because of that, and because I think we're even more susceptible to it right now, I guess my question is, are we creating grading systems right now that are at the heart are inequitable? Like, are we unfairly creating grading systems right now? Especially for kids who either don't know how to advocate for themselves or don't have someone else to advocate for them. I don't know, what do you guys think?
I think that it comes in terms of resources that students have as far as, advocacy. So if you talk about which population of students have the resources to reach out to the teacher for questions for a Q&A session or for a Zoom session, I find that as a teacher, we're a month in now, and I have a handful of students whose parents are advocating for that student. And so what turns out happening is I spend time responding to the emails, whether it's an assignment, whether it's a test or a quiz, why, Jimmy didn't score as well as he should have, and so what turns out happening is throughout the day, if you have a handful of students, your timeline as far as spending your time as a teacher trying to reach out to certain students, you get tunneled into one direction, into one group, and that one group usually turns out to be parents who are college educated or at least have a high school diploma. And so what turns out is, as a teacher, you're forced to spend your time on that group of students. And given our schedules, our day goes like this. Before you know it's 3 o'clock, before you know it's 4 o'clock. And I want to reach out to those kids who aren't turning in assignments, but at the end of the day, my time gets deviated to those students who have strong advocates for them and parents. And so I want to be as professional as possible, and I want to respond as much as possible, as quick as possible, to those emails from parents, because that's my job. But at the end of the day, I only have so much time in the day to get stuff done.
And it gets taken up by the people who take that time. Not that they're stealing time, it's time, but consistently you're seeing advocates taking that time rather than students who are not advocates for themselves or don't have advocates.
And those kids who don't have advocates, their parents are working, and they work late. They work all day. They work 7 days a week. And so again, me as a teacher, I want to respect, the time that parents request. That's my job, I feel.
Molly, what's your experience? There you
go. I was going to add on that it feels like I use the term teacher triage a lot. Like every day you have these, you have a long list of things you need to accomplish. And then your time, you might arrive with certain goals for the day, but then it might, the day changes because certain people require your attention for various things, like, parent emails, for example. And so then, like you have, 8 or 9 hours and to accomplish a lot that isn't actually possible to get done in that amount of time. And so then you have to figure out, well, how are you going to use whatever time for, am I going to spend, I have 15 kids that are like right on the brink. So how do I use my time to get those kids brought up, and at the same time, yeah, respectfully email parents back quickly, and colleagues and admin and everything else. And that ends up being like, to me, I feel like I end up being really reactionary, like right now in particular. Normally I don't think I'm this reactionary, but yeah, like I'll get an email from a student, for example, that's like, hey, you didn't grade this thing, and my parents on my case about it being graded or whatever. And then I'm like, okay. So I literally stop everything that I'm doing and then grade that assignment. And then I'm like, okay, well, wait, where was I? Like, what was I doing? Where was I going with that? And now that kid is, you know, like can rest, like can relax, because their parents are going to be like, okay, well, you just got, you know, whatever grade on that assignment. Okay, like moving on. But in the meantime, I've been totally derailed from whatever I was focused on. I haven't had the same experience though with parents emailing me for grade related stuff. I've had kind of the opposite. It's been really quiet from the end of my parents. Like I haven't really had any. I've actually been the one who's been advocating for certain students, and it just feels like I'm talking to like a brick wall. Like I don't know where these parents are. I don't know where these kids are. So I'm kind of having the opposite, where I don't know. I don't really have a good answer for that or a good relay to that. Do I think the system is failing those kids? Yes, absolutely. Because yeah, like those are the kids that need the most help. Those are the kids that need the brick and mortar classroom. Those are the kids that need the advocates. And there is like, I don't know how to, I've like done everything I can. Yeah, exactly. It's just out of our control now. And so like what I've tried to do is like, you know, I don't give zeros, I give 50% as the baseline. And so they can't go into like what I see as like a negative, like the F is 6 times stronger than any other grade, which is just like insane to me to think about.
It's still salvageable when it's that 50%.
Yes, exactly.
It's still an F. It's the same as a 0%.
Still an F, right? But they could, you know, even if the kid does like 2 or 3 assignments to make up, they would be in passing territory. And then maybe that's all they need to be like, I can do this. Like, oh, I can do a little bit more, but I'm still like, I haven't gotten there with students yet. Like they're still at the 50%. So I don't know.
Do you guys think that grades motivate or demotivate or both? Because that's another thing I've been thinking a lot about lately, is how I think we think that grades we assume as teachers that grades do certain things with our students, but I'm starting to question that, I guess is what I'm saying.
I wanna jump on this now. That's a really good question. I knew that we were gonna leave it for Cesar and Molly, but it has long been, I mean, I think that grades motivate some students. They've been taught to be motivated by grades, and they've been taught to value grades as an aspect of their value as a human being, you know? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that as long as it's not to the extreme, you know? And I think that oftentimes it does go to the extreme. But I motivate students. Like, I think that it's up to teachers and parents to be the motivators. And if we're relying on money to motivate kids, and we're relying on grades to motivate kids, and we're relying on a car to motivate a kid, that we're actually taking away the most important component of relationship building, which is that it is an interaction and it is a transaction between people. That's why I believe relationship building is so important. And if we're not investing in them, if we're not investing in making transactions, if we're not making those investments, we can't withdraw those investments. A kid that I have not invested in is not going to then pay me back in homework. I have to invest in that kid, and I have to show them that they have a value. I mean, that's I could talk about it for a while, and I'm not going to.
Go back. The fact that it's so hard right now to develop relationships with kids, is that one of the reasons why we're grading so much? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, we can't use that normal thing that we've used in class. So now, instead of replacing that with a grading program in Canvas, I don't know.
Yeah, we
Cesar, you wanted something.
Yeah. That's a good question. I wanted to kind of backtrack a little bit and talk about grades and what does it mean for kids? What does a grade mean for a kid in terms of motivation? I think it's cultural, but it's also, I think it depends on how the kid was, you know, on the kid's parents. And when I say cultural, for example, I'm Latinx, right? I grew up first generation college student in my family. And I was always told as a high school student, my parents would only ask me this: are you passing? And I said, it's like, yeah, you know. And what does that mean in terms of grades? Well, that means D's and C's. So in terms of that, okay, I'm passing. So I grew up in mentality, oh, passing C's and D's, okay? So then Brian says, what does it mean for, you know, how can we add context to these kids? Okay, do you want to have a nice job? Do you want to have a nice house? Do you want to have a nice car? Well, then these are the grades that are going to get you there. And for me, growing up culturally, I was always just asked, like my parents asked me, hey, are you passing? Are you passing? And then if you ask on the other end, you know, and I mean like Caucasians, you ask their kids, like, you know, they don't ask you if they're passing, they're asking you, hey, do I have an A? Do I have a B? Right? That's the complete difference. And I see it now as a teacher as well, where kids in math are struggling. They see me and they ask me, so what do I have? It's like, well, you know, you have a D. It's like, yes, I'm passing. And I'm like, it blows my mind. Is like, you're passing, because what does that mean? Well, that means that they got heat, you know, coming off of them from their parents. You know, if you ask a kid, you know, they're getting heat from their parents because they have a B or a B minus. You know, so again, it's cultural. What does it mean? And maybe we need to reinforce the context behind a grade on how to motivate kids to do better in school. And that starts with building relationships, communicating. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Those types of things.
I think also this is a whole other episode, is that we're grading the kids' learning, which I just think is like, you're basically saying, oh, you're only like a C learner. Like, how does that make you feel? You know, like learning should be, I mean, I think like school aside, we're curious by nature and we want to find things out. We want to learn about the world around us. We want to learn about the people around us. We want to learn about, you know, like the towns around us. I think that's just human nature, like our natural curiosity. And when you put a grade on that, some kids are really motivated by that for sure. And I think maybe that's a competitive thing too. Like maybe they want to outperform their peers, or they want to get into a good college and you need A's and B's to do that or whatever. But for other kids that might not know exactly what they want after high school, all they see is like they aren't getting as good of grades as someone else. And rather than us being, you know, the like facilitators of learning, we're just assessing them and giving them a grade based on their learning, which I just think is like if I had it my way, I wouldn't do grades at all. I think it'd be so awesome if we just like didn't grade them. It's just like, no, you're here to purely learn. I don't need to give you like an A, B, C, D, or F on that. Like you're just here to learn. And I don't know that that would ever happen either, because you do have the system really is set up for you to, for there to be a hierarchy of achievement, right? And so how do we do that? We grade. And so who's motivated by that? Like those really high achieving kids that are maybe only high achieving because they have so much privilege. And they have those advocates that are like, hey, here's what you're going to do. And I'm going to, you know, email all your teachers and talk to them and ensure that you get an A.
So what both of you are making me think about is the fact that we have to, on the one hand, we have to recognize that grades are not necessarily motivating, and what motivates a student to learn is the desire to learn and our relationships with their relationships with us, the teachers, and vice versa. But also, we have an obligation to teach kids, as you're saying, Cesar, that grades do matter when it comes to what's next, right? I mean, we're three of us in this Zoom right now are all avid elective teachers, and I think we do that a lot with avid students, is like talk about that, like be really obvious about that with grades. But it's a hard balance to make between like, hey, you guys got to try and get an A, but don't forget you also have to care about learning too. You know what I mean? So, and then it's like, I want you to get an A because I'm trying to undermine a bit the system that has been set up so that you aren't going to necessarily get an A. But don't forget that you also have to learn chemistry too, not just get an A in chemistry.
Yeah, it's important to get an A, but also it's not so important to get an A that you should make it the only thing you're striving for. But you need to strive for it so you can overcome. But also don't stress it too hard if you get a B+. But you really need an A. That is like, yeah.
Yes.
That's not right.
Yep.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm going to have to end the call here because it's payday. I have to get takeout because in about 42 minutes, I have to start a Zoom call outside of my school day with my Avid students to help them make sure that they're getting their FAFSAs done. And that's what I'll be doing all night tonight. And that's what I did open up all night last night, but the FAFSA website was offline. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen again. So thank you very much for coming. Thanks everyone for listening. If you like it, please hit like, hit subscribe, share with your friends, share with your friends' friends, share with your kids' teachers. Because it'd be nice to, I don't know, I'm going to keep doing it whether you like it or not. So maybe don't like it, whatever. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Good talking to you.
Bye.
Good night.